Have you ever woken up and felt like the whole world was waiting to pull you away from yourself? Messages, notifications, work, pressure, everything hits before you even get a chance to breathe deeply. You haven't even asked, "Who am I today?" And yet, you're already swept into things beyond your control. And so, another day slips by. Unconsciously you react, you chase, but you don't truly live. That's why Stoics begin their day in stillness, not to be carried away by circumstance, but to stand firm from within. They don't try to change the world before understanding themselves. Because they know you can't control everything, but you can always control how you show up, how you feel, and how you act. Each morning is a chance to choose again the kind of person you want to be. And in this video, I'll share with you 10 Stoic reminders, small anchors, strong enough to steady your mind through the day. 1. Focus only on what you can control. There is a foundational principle in Stoic philosophy that, if fully grasped, can completely change how you face life, learning to clearly distinguish between what is within your control and what is not. It sounds simple, yet most of our suffering, anger, and stress come from trying to control things we simply cannot, while neglecting the very things we do have power over: our thoughts, our attitude, and our actions. The external world operates according to laws that are indifferent to our emotions or personal wishes. The weather doesn't change just because you hope for a sunny day. People won't behave exactly as you expect just because you're kind. Work won't always flow smoothly simply because you gave your best. Things like public opinion, social instability, others' behaviors, or final outcomes, these are not things you can control absolutely. And the more tightly you cling to them, the more disappointment, disorientation, and helplessness you will feel. On the other hand, the one thing you always have power over is how you respond. You can choose how you think about a situation. You can choose your words, your attitude, your behavior. You can choose to stay silent instead of engaging in pointless arguments. You can choose to act with kindness, even when others don't. That initiative is an inner power no one can take from you, and with every choice you make, you are shaping who you are, not by circumstance, but by how you respond to it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That line is not some hollow motivation, but a guiding compass for anyone seeking inner freedom. Because once you give up your right to choose your response, you hand your life over to the ever-changing winds of the world. Practicing this principle doesn't mean being indifferent to life or ignoring what's happening. It means knowing where to invest your energy. When something happens, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and instead ask, "What can I do right now, based on what I can control?" That question unlocks a life that is active, strong, and directed. Focusing on what you can control is the act of surrendering the illusion of control over the world and beginning the real work of building inner strength. It's not retreat, it's advancement. It's a step inward, where peace doesn't come from everything going right, but from choosing to live deliberately and steadily in each moment. And from that starting point, true transformation begins. 2. Accept things as they are. One of the deepest roots of human suffering is resistance to reality. We often don't suffer because of what happens, but because we believe it shouldn't have happened. When our expectations about life clash with the way life actually unfolds, a crack opens within us. And in that crack, we start to grow angry, complain, blame, or break down. But Stoicism doesn't ask you to ignore pain or deny hardship. It teaches you to accept the truth exactly as it is. Nothing more, nothing less. Acceptance does not mean agreeing with injustice. does not mean surrendering to adversity, and certainly does not mean giving up efforts to improve the situation. It simply means seeing things clearly, without layering on judgment, expectation, or fantasy. An event occurs. It's neither good nor bad. Only when your mind begins to label, compare, and resist does suffering arise. When you accept reality as it is, you no longer waste energy denying what cannot be undone. Instead, you begin to use your reason and inner strength to decide the next step. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "Don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it does, and your life will flow smoothly." Within that brief statement lies deep awareness. The world does not revolve around our feelings and desires. Nature has its own laws. Humans have their own limits. Society has its own movements. When you let go of the need to bend everything to your will, you do not become weaker, you become stronger, because now you are no longer fighting what cannot be changed, but learning to move with life as it really is. Some things will arrive no matter how prepared you are. Some losses will happen even when you've loved with all your heart. Some injustices will exist even if you've always done the right thing. But acceptance is not giving up. It is a foundation to begin again, a shield against being swept into emotional chaos, a place to preserve the clarity needed for right action. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and instead ask, "Given this, what can I do now?" you shift from being reactive to being intentional. You choose to live by reason, not by instinct. Acceptance is also a form of freedom, because one who accepts no longer depends on circumstances to feel at peace. Their calm is not held in the hands of the world, but rooted in their own attitude toward it. They do not try to control the current, but learn to swim with calm and adaptability. And they do not drown because they do not thrash about in vain, but use every breath to remain centered. This is the quiet strength of acceptance, not running from reality, but facing it, embracing it, and from there, choosing the path forward with awareness and responsibility. 3. Prepare for the worst-case scenarios. There is a mental habit in Stoic philosophy that, if practiced regularly, will radically change the way you face uncertainty in life. It is called premeditatio malorum, the act of imagining the worst things that could happen. Not to breed pessimism or sink into worry, but to train the mind to stay ready, alert, and steady when the unpredictable strikes. When you prepare mentally ahead of time, you are no longer easily broken by surprise. You've developed a kind of defensive wisdom, not to resist life, but to walk through it with inner stability. Most panic doesn't arise because the event is too terrible, but because we never considered that it might happen. The mind naturally craves control and safety, but the world does not operate by the inner logic of any one person. And it is precisely because we don't prepare or imagine what could go wrong that we spiral into confusion, anger, or deep disappointment. Stoicism teaches that instead of always hoping for the best, we must also learn to embrace the worst as a natural part of the journey. Envisioning the worst doesn't make you cold or faithless toward life. On the contrary, it allows you to step into reality with clarity and initiative. You don't seek out trouble, but you are no longer paralyzed when it arrives. Your peace no longer depends on a flawless life. It becomes resilient, flexible, and capable of recovering quickly. This is the strength of a mind trained not only in hope, but in discipline and truth. Seneca once wrote, "He who looks ahead to calamity will lessen its power when it comes." When you've already lived through the worst in your mind, you are not fully at its mercy if it happens in reality. You've had time to prepare your response, find options, adjust your posture. And in that seemingly small act of visualizing and preparing, you reclaim agency from the hands of fate. In practice, this can be simple. Before a critical day, sit down for a few minutes and ask yourself, if today goes badly, how will I respond? Not to invite fear, but to establish a proactive mindset. Because what you fear most is not failure, rejection, or being off course. It's the feeling of being unprepared to face them. When you turn toward the darkness, you don't become a pessimist, you begin to see the path through it. And that readiness helps you keep walking without trembling. The ability to anticipate misfortune doesn't kill your optimism. It nourishes a kind of steadiness that only emerges when you're willing to face what you once avoided. And once you've grown used to preparing for the worst, there is nothing that can completely undo you. You've taken one step ahead of the world, and with each such step, you move closer to an unshakable peace. 4. Return to the present moment. The human mind tends to wander sometimes back to the past, other times toward worries about the future. And throughout that journey, the one thing that's truly lost is the present. No matter where you sit or what you do, if your mind isn't with your body in that moment, then you're not really living. You're merely existing in a long thread of imagined thoughts where memories and expectations compete for your attention. And ironically, it's this habit that drains you, stresses you out, and leaves you feeling like life is slipping through your fingers. In Stoic philosophy, the present is the only foundation you can truly stand on. Because the past is closed and cannot be changed, and the future hasn't yet arrived. Trying to rewrite what's gone or control what hasn't come is not only futile, it also distracts your mind from what matters most, that you are here, now. Only in the present can you act, choose, change, or let go. Everything else lies beyond your immediate reach. When you allow your mind to drift into scenarios that haven't happened, you let fear start to guide your life. Every worry about the future is the result of imagining something that doesn't exist and then reacting to it as if it were already real. That's the fastest way to lose your peace. Stoicism doesn't deny the future, but it insists that your concern about it should be handled through action in the present. Only by focusing on what must be done now can you ease the anxiety about what hasn't happened. Returning to the present is a conscious act. It doesn't happen by accident. It must be trained daily. It might be the moment you pause to take a deep breath and feel the rhythm of it. It might be fully focusing on one task without letting your mind jump into unnecessary concerns. And it might also be the gentle reminder that you don't always need to be ahead of everything. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is to be fully present with what is happening, no matter how small it seems. When you live in the present, you become sharper in your choices. You react less on impulse and more with intention. You no longer lose yourself in stories your mind invents. You become the one steering your mind, instead of letting it wander by unconscious habit. And in that return, you don't just find calm, you find yourself again. A being who is living, feeling, choosing, and capable of transforming each moment through awareness. The world will always be noisy. There will always be something that worries or distracts you. But the present is always available, always ready to welcome you back. And every time you do, even with just a breath, a glance, or your full presence, you remind yourself of something simple yet profound. Life happens only here, right now. And if you lose the present, you lose the only thing that truly belongs to you. 5. Learn to master your emotions. Emotions are a natural part of being human, but when misdirected, they can become the very force that strips you of reason, triggers poor choices, and damages what you hold dear. Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress or deny emotions. It teaches that understanding and mastering them is one of the highest forms of wisdom. Because only when you understand where your emotions come from can you choose to respond not by impulse, but by clarity of mind. The first truth to remember is that emotions never appear randomly. They are a direct result of how you interpret a situation. Two people can face the same event and feel completely different things simply because they see it through different inner lenses. So the issue isn't the outside event, it's the internal reaction. And that's the space where you can train emotional mastery by first questioning how you perceive the situation. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It's not the things themselves that disturb people, but their judgments about them." That sentence is the heart of Stoic emotional discipline. You don't need to suppress your sadness, fake a smile, or pretend you're not angry, but you can pause, observe the feeling, refuse to become one with it, and from there, choose a response that doesn't hurt yourself or others. That's not repression, it's transformation. Emotional mastery is the ability to stay grounded in the moments you're most shaken. When someone insults you, you can choose silence over retaliation. When you're disappointed, you can choose to write your thoughts instead of lashing out. When faced with injustice, you can act with integrity instead of letting outrage burn away your reason. These choices aren't gifts, they're the result of training the mind daily, watching yourself even in the smallest moments. Stoics don't believe people are born strong or calm. They believe in training. Just like muscles grow stronger through effort, emotional control requires time, challenge, and persistence. Every time you choose to respond slowly instead of impulsively, you strengthen a piece of your inner resilience. Every time you engage your emotions instead of running from them, you cultivate courage from within. And every time you stay calm in a storm, you take back ownership of your life. A person who has mastered their emotions isn't someone who never feels anger, sadness, or fear. They still feel everything, like anyone else, but they don't let emotions unconsciously drive their actions. They use emotions as signals to look inward, clarify their core values, and act in line with them. And when emotions are no longer the master, but a guided companion, you'll feel a rare kind of freedom. A freedom not shaken by events, not manipulated by others, and not hijacked by the storms within your own soul. 6. Practice gratitude intentionally. Gratitude is one of the most powerful mental states a person can cultivate. It's not just polite words or a social reflex, it's a conscious, deep way of seeing what's already present in your life. In Stoic philosophy, gratitude doesn't come from everything being perfect, but from the ability to recognize the value of what still remains even in the midst of loss, chaos, or lack. Because the grateful person is not the one who has everything, but the one who misses nothing. To live with gratitude doesn't mean denying pain or pretending everything is fine. It means facing life in both its light and its shadow and still finding reasons to appreciate. There is always something of worth, however small, that exists in this moment, but we often overlook it, distracted by what we don't yet have. When you shift your attention to the things that are working, the silent forces holding your life together each day, you begin to change the way you experience reality. You stop living in a sense of scarcity and start feeling an inner abundance. Stoicism holds that gratitude is a form of lived wisdom. It doesn't depend on favorable conditions or lucky breaks, but on your choice to focus on what is. When you begin the day not by thinking of what's missing, but of what remains, you build a steady emotional foundation for meeting whatever surprises may come. You no longer live with a victim mindset. You begin living as a creator, not through power or possessions, but through awareness and inner clarity. Gratitude also reshapes how you respond to difficulty. Instead of seeing only what's lost, you begin to see the lesson. Instead of seeing only the limit, you see a chance to grow beyond it. And instead of feeding comparison, you begin to recognize the fullness in each moment. That is the greatest strength of gratitude. It doesn't change your circumstances, but it changes how you live within them. And that shift opens the door to peace, acceptance, and a deeper connection to yourself and the world. Cultivating gratitude doesn't require rituals or long hours. Sometimes it's just a few seconds of stillness to breathe and realize you're still here, still capable of choosing, still supported by unseen threads each day. A morning sunbeam, a simple meal, a quiet moment, each can become a doorway back to gratitude if you're willing to pause and feel it. And when gratitude becomes part of your rhythm, you no longer wait for something big to feel fulfilled. To practice gratitude intentionally is to empower yourself. You don't wait for good things to happen to feel thankful. You choose to live with appreciation from the start. It's the quiet courage not to drown in lack, not to be ruled by externals, and not to lose your ability to see beauty in even the most modest setting. In a world full of noise, complaints, comparisons, and demands, gratitude becomes a silent but profound rebellion, a way to protect your clarity, your awareness, and your freedom of soul. 7. You can still learn. Even in difficulty, no one escapes adversity. No matter how cautious or prepared you are, life will eventually bring challenges you didn't choose. Unexpected losses, sudden closures, uninvited pain. But what Stoic philosophy insists on is not how to avoid difficulty, but how to use it as the very ground on which to grow. Because every hardship, when seen with awareness, holds a lesson we'd never grasp in times of ease. Stoics don't see adversity as misfortune, but as a natural and necessary part of human development. They understand that the mind, like the muscles, grows only under pressure. If life were always smooth and easy, patience would never be forged, reason would not evolve, and inner strength would remain a vague idea. It's only when pushed into uncertainty that we begin to look within, to question what really matters, and to discover a strength we didn't know we had. One of Stoicism's core principles is this: every experience can become fuel for your spiritual evolution. Disappointment teaches you to release unrealistic expectations. Hurt teaches you to set boundaries and be honest with your feelings. Failure teaches you perseverance, humility, and the need to reassess your direction. No experience is wasted if you are willing to learn from it. And once you start viewing adversity as life's classroom, every time you fall becomes not an ending, but an invitation to continue wiser than before. Learning from difficulty is not automatic. It requires inner observation, the courage to face emotions without escape, and the honesty to confront yourself without excuses or blame. Sometimes the lesson doesn't come right away. You may need time to grieve, to settle, to see clearly once the tears have dried. But if you carry within you a learning mindset that every situation contains something to uncover, then even in the darkest hours, you will hold on to a flicker of light to keep going. Stoicism doesn't promise that awareness will spare you from pain. It only affirms that with the right mindset, pain will never be meaningless. It becomes the substance that shapes your character, strips away what's excessive, and sharpens what is essential. And when you emerge from hardship with a learner's mindset instead of a complainer's voice, you are no longer the same. You come out with a steadier mind, a deeper heart, and an inner resilience that no book or lecture could ever teach. That is the hidden gift in adversity reserved only for those brave enough to stay and learn to the end. 8. Act according to values, not emotions. Human beings are emotional creatures, and it is emotion that makes us feel alive, humane, and connected to the world around us. But without the guidance of reason and core values, emotion can become a blind guide leading us into poor actions, regretful words, and decisions that betray the very person we wish to become. Stoicism does not ask you to become a stone devoid of feeling. It emphasizes that meaningful action must arise from inner steadiness, not fleeting impulses. To act according to values means you know what is right, just, courageous, and measured, and you let those principles guide every choice, regardless of circumstance, temptation, fear, or pressure. It means keeping your promises even when it's no longer convenient, showing kindness even when others don't deserve it, and choosing silence to protect the truth rather than lying to avoid discomfort. These choices aren't always easy or immediately rewarding, but they form the foundation for a life without regret. The Stoics understood that emotions come and go, but values shape character. If you let emotions drive your actions, you become a different person every day, tossed about by the shifting winds of the outside world. But if you live by values, even in your most unstable moments, you have an internal compass to guide you. That consistency is your deepest strength, a kind of self-command no one can take from you, even in the harshest conditions. Acting by values also requires you to step back from impulse and observe yourself. It demands that you ask, where is this decision coming from fear, pride, anger, or my guiding principles? Only when you are calm enough to answer honestly can you act without betraying yourself. And each time you choose this path, even in the smallest matters, you reinforce a clear identity, not one shaped by circumstance, but one built deliberately, day by day. A person who lives by values is not always right, but they are always honest with themselves. They don't need to be perfect, but they never take their important choices lightly. Because they understand that while outcomes are never fully in their control, their attitude and integrity always are. And if at the end of the day you can look back and say, today I acted without betraying the values I believe in, then whether that day brought success or failure, you still keep your self-respect, your peace, and your trust in yourself. 9. Lower expectations, elevate peace. Expectations are a double-edged sword. On one hand, they motivate us, nurture hope, and shape our direction, but when not aligned with reality, they can become a source of disappointment, hurt, and unnecessary conflict. Stoicism doesn't deny the usefulness of expectations, it simply advises that we adjust them to fit the world as it is. Because if you carry unrealistic expectations about the world, others, or yourself, you will keep colliding with invisible walls of your own making. Stoics understand that one reason people suffer is because they believe life owes them something that others must understand them, treat them fairly, keep promises, or behave as expected. But life doesn't follow anyone's script. Every person operates from their own framework, with their own feelings, beliefs, experiences, and limitations. When you place expectations on others that they never agreed to, you cast them in a role they didn't choose, and you put yourself in a mental space that's easily wounded. Lowering expectations doesn't mean being passive or giving up on ideals. On the contrary, it's the act of someone mature enough to accept that the world doesn't revolve around personal desires. When you stop expecting everything to go perfectly, you begin to meet reality with greater ease. When you stop demanding that others always understand, you make room for compassion, and when you stop forcing yourself to always be right, strong, or unshakable, You allow yourself to be human, full of contradictions, limits, and the potential to grow. One of the most important Stoic reminders is this: actions are yours, outcomes are not. You can give your best effort, but the result is never fully in your hands. If you tie your worth to the outcome, you'll live in constant tension because outcomes fluctuate based on countless external factors. But if you focus only on doing what is right and release your attachment to how things unfold, you'll begin to discover a special kind of peace. The peace that comes from knowing you lived with integrity no matter what happens. Lowering expectations is an act of inner freedom. When you no longer rely on others' reactions to define your worth, you become grounded. When you stop forcing life to match your plans, you become flexible. And when you stop attaching happiness to things beyond your control, you begin to feel a lightness, an openness, and a clarity you may never have known before. In a world of constant change, where everything can shift in a blink, the one who knows how to lower expectations holds the key to enduring peace within. 10. Remember, every day could be your last. None of us enjoy thinking about death. It carries a chill, a sense of uncertainty, and a quiet unease we try to avoid in every possible way. But for those who practice Stoic philosophy, contemplating death is not an act of despair or weakness. It's a necessary reminder to awaken, to live consciously, and to reevaluate what truly matters. The concept of Memento Mori, remember you will die, was never meant to frighten us, but to help us live more fully, more rightly, and more sincerely in every moment. Because when you face the limits of time head-on, you begin to see life through a clearer lens. You realize there's no time to waste on anger, blame, delay, or living a life that isn't truly yours. Every moment you have is a gift that won't repeat itself. And only when you accept that anything, a conversation, a meeting, a hug, an opportunity could end tomorrow, do you finally become fully present with it today. No longer preoccupied by the trivial, no longer wasting time on meaningless arguments, no longer living half-heartedly. Stoicism teaches that contemplating death doesn't make us gloomy, it purifies us. It clarifies what's superficial, what's essential, what should be forgiven, and what's worth preserving. When you accept that tomorrow is never guaranteed, you begin to treasure the life you still have today. You pause to feel a conversation instead of rushing through it. You say what must be said, do what must be done, and live as if every action carries real weight in the short timeline we're given. Living with the awareness that each day could be the last doesn't make you frantic or afraid. On the contrary, it brings presence, clarity, and deep gratitude for even the smallest things. You stop chasing meaningless goals just to prove something. You stop losing yourself in nameless races. Because you understand that no one escapes the end, but everyone has the power to choose how they live before it arrives. And it's precisely because death is certain that life becomes sacred. Every time you open your eyes to a new day, it's not just another repeat, it's a chance. To love, to make amends, to learn, to give, to live without regret. No one knows how much time they have, but anyone can choose to live as if time is finite. And that may be one of the most courageous and beautiful things a human being can do. To live every day to the fullest, not out of fear of dying, but out of reverence for being alive. To me, practicing Stoic philosophy is not about becoming hardened or indifferent to life, but about returning to a state of awareness and responsibility in every small choice. I believe a meaningful life is not measured by how often we avoid pain, but by how we face it with clarity, restraint, and self-respect. In a world where everything is in constant motion, maintaining inner consistency, acting by values instead of emotions, and not letting expectations distort reality is a form of freedom I choose daily to preserve. Stoic philosophy doesn't make life less harsh, but it makes me stronger, so I am not defeated by it. And when I live with the mindset that each day could be my last, I waste nothing, not even silence, a glance, or a small act of kindness. If you found this content meaningful, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And no matter what the world outside may bring, I hope you hold on to your peace, clarity, and inner resolve, because that is what truly belongs to you. See you in the next video.